So you want to draw better faces and heads, but you don't know where to start? For years I've been trying to improve my portrait drawing since I really like to draw characters. But getting the face right can be tricky since we as humans are wired to detect faces, and this means that whether you're an artist or not, you can tell when a face looks off.
Ugh. Brother, ugh. What's that? What's that, brother?
I just recently realized that after some time making really bad art, I finally improved and I don't suck at drawing faces now as much as I did in the past. And in this video, I'll try to explain how I went from this to this. I think that one of the things that it's making a big difference in my art lately is studying a bit the human skull. And I say a bit because I don't think it's necessary for you to memorize all of this and get super anxious about anatomy overall. I believe that you can draw fairly decent faces like this, knowing the right amount of information. And this without spending the remaining of your days just drawing skulls. It helps to understand what's going on with the head constructions. Having a session here and there where you actively try to draw the skull, with or without references, is always a good practice. But what I don't want you to do is spend more time drawing skulls than drawing your own characters. I've come to the realization that you can in fact procrastinate just by practicing and studying and not actually making time for your own art. So first of all, what I would like you to remember from this boy right here are these 4 landmarks: the eye sockets, the cheekbones, the jawline and chin, and the temples. By the way, this is the 3D skull I found on Sketchfab. I especially like this one because he's colorful and friendly compared to other 3D models, and I think it's important to have fun and interesting study references so you don't get bored. Now let's study some art to spot these bony landmarks. This is Nanami from Jujutsu Kaisen. He's a character that has what you probably heard as a sharp bone structure, and that's because his cheekbones, jawline, and temples are very prominent and noticeable. Younger Toguro is also a good example where you can easily spot bony landmarks like the temples, the jawline, and high cheekbones. Of course, you also have characters like Sophie and Belle on the other end of the spectrum. Here, bony landmarks are not so out there like in the previous examples, but you can still trace the structure underneath the face. Without a skull, these characters would probably look like this, and we don't want to draw balloon people. This is why, even if you don't plan to draw characters like old Sophie or Tokuro, or even if you plan to make highly stylized art, being familiar with the landmarks I just showed you will save you time in the future since you'll be no longer wondering why some areas of the face look the way they do. Today my art is more intentional and I get to results not by mistake but rather by knowing more information. I know now that I'll draw a crease here because here's the eye socket and that here I should draw a soft C-curve to indicate the cheekbone. In addition to learning the basics of the skull, we also have to practice building a structure for the head. You can use the Loomis Method for this, which gives you a template to construct a head using a circle, a center line, guidelines for the facial features, and a jawline. The Loomis Method can be really useful not only to draw heads from references, but also to draw heads from invention. But before we move on to the next point, I'd like to stress out that you don't have to master Loomis Method in order to move on with your drawings. More often than not, I try to keep things very simple for my own art and just draw a very basic interpretation of the Loomis head, because trying to replicate it perfectly would only lead you to draw art that probably would look a bit too robotic. And making art, at least for me, should be about expressiveness and emotion, rather than just going through life strictly measuring it all. I'm a strong believer that being consistent with your art practice will help you develop an intuition to understand proportions more easily, to make better marks, and overall to draw with more confidence. Now, if you're struggling with having ideas on how to practice all these concepts we've covered today, I suggest these exercises for you to try it at home. First, we have quick sketches. Do this to train yourself to create a structure of a head using the Loomis construction, with the circles, center lines, and guidelines. Make sure to keep these drawings very simple and don't focus on the details. Rather, become familiar with just the basics. Your drawing should look like this. Put a timer of 45 seconds to 2 minutes per photo and try filling a page with these little heads within 15 to 20 minutes. You can also see this exercise as a warm-up. For long studies, follow the same steps you did for the quick sketches, but now narrow down the amount of heads you'll be drawing to 6 or 4. This time you want to spend more time adding details and refining your face so they look more organic. To study this goal, I know that showing you pictures won't be enough to actually remember all of these landmarks I mentioned, so try drawing this goal by yourself, but stick to just these basic angles. Just like you did for the quick sketches, try filling a page with these skulls. Here's a tip for studying. Note how I'm using a round brush here. This is because I want to keep myself from going wild with the details, because my focus here for this study session is constructing a head that has nice proportions while using the least amount of lines. This will train me to be more intentional with my marks. Now, how to choose your references. Before you go and start collecting your references, please keep this in mind. I would recommend you to select photos with simple head angles. Don't start by picking the most crazy references you can find, especially if you're a beginner. I believe that a 3/4 angle are the best way to go. Avoid pixelated photos, portraits where the head is cropped, and faces with exaggerated facial expressions. It might seem like nothing, but just having the mandible open like this will affect the proportions, and this will make the exercise and your experience more difficult than it should. Remember that the point of practicing is to fail and learn, of course, but you also want to have successes. Imagine trying to build a consistent art practice where you never get anything right. Eventually, you'll feel like you're definitely not good at drawing and think to yourself that it's better not to try at all. I have this feeling that most of the time people learning art stop making art not because they are biologically unable to learn the skills needed, but because they are constantly adding too much complexity to their art studies. And this results in never seeing consistent growth. So remember to always keep it simple. Hopefully this video will inspire you to go out there and start practicing and then see how these exercises and insights translate into your art. You might even discover, just like I did, that studying can be really fun, and even if you make bad art, you can always get something out of it. And I'm telling you this as someone who has come a long way, doing wonky faces, to now draw more decent faces that can only exist because of those many wonky faces I did in the past. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave me a like and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the upcoming videos about the most common mistakes we tend to make when drawing faces, or how to stylize a face from our references, and so much more. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for staying for the final bit of this video, and I hope to see you on the next one.